What am I planning to do for Inktober this year? And how might that benefit you to just hear how one other human takes a stab at this? Let's take a look. So, in the background, I ironically have an image that is very similar to some of the ones that I worked on last year for Inktober in 2023. It's going to involve the same little character that so many of those drawings did. And if it looks like I'm drawing like a machine in the background, fret not. This is sped up 2.25 times, which is pretty common for YouTube, but sometimes it's hard because you watch other people work and you feel like you're so slow. And no, most of us are just speeding things up so it looks a little bit more interesting, and so you don't notice how often we hesitate. I've seen some discourse recently about the prompts for 2024 Inktober. There's a lot of people who seem to think they're kind of boring or they're kind of lame compared to some of the last years. I have to admit, I have a little bit of that feeling too, but my perspective is a little bit different here. So, some people saw the prompt list and they got upset because there are so many words that are kind of similar, like expedition and journey and hike. These are words that are similar in some fashion. In fact, words like backpack, binoculars, guidebook, journal, they're all included, and it feels like this year is themed. And in a lot of prior years, it hasn't been that way. A lot of prior years, it hasn't felt like all of them are naturally themed in a particular way. And some people are upset about that. So I wanted to talk about that first, because my perspective on that might just provide some context that might be helpful for you, or it might just vindicate your own perspective. So first of all, if you're not excited about the prompts, something has to be done. This is a drawing challenge of some kind, and the goal of which is to get you working on ink drawings for an entire month as part of a community who's also doing it. And if nothing about it is exciting for you, then something has to change. Now, for me, when I run into that, my first instinct is to buckle down and figure out a way to make it work. This isn't necessarily the right option for everyone, but here's why I do it. I find that I grow a lot as an artist when I force myself to do things that aren't necessarily exciting right off the bat. When I look at the prompt backpack, for example, or binoculars, there's not something that jumps out at me that's really intriguing about those. When I had ones in prior years like gargoyle or bat, those were exciting right off the bat. I didn't mean the pun there, but it just happened. There were things that came to mind that were fun to play with, that were fun to do. And when I see binoculars or rhinoceros, I'm just not altogether inspired. But for me, I find that when I work through that lack of inspiration, that lack of motivation, that's where the real good progress comes out. Now, my goal as an artist is to get better, to keep improving, and to make myself better in that process. And when I commit myself to something like this, and I do all of those prompts, even the ones that don't excite me, I find that I grow. I look up references that I wouldn't have normally. I find ways to make them interesting. And so that's my outlook on it. But I also don't marry myself entirely. If I run into a situation where one is just going to be miserable for me to work on, I will shift it. When I was working on Smogus last month, one of the last dragons was rail. That was the prompt. And the more I thought about it, the more it just had to do with trains and parallel lines. And I did a couple sketches and just went, you know what? I've done every one of these in order, and I'm just not going to do this one. And I swapped it out for crustacean, and I felt no guilt. So those are a couple of my kind of ideas about this. I would encourage you, if you find some of the prompts boring, to try to just tinker with them for a little while. Figure out if there's something you can do that'll be exciting or interesting or weird. And then if you really can't find something, just pick something that's going to be inspiring for you, because the important thing is that you're doing the work, that you're making the drawings. But if you are playing with some of these, take the one binoculars, for example. I'm not sure how I'm going to fit it in, but Binoculars could be binocular vision. It could be an animal that has binocular-like eyes. It could be a fantasy world where someone is uncovering binoculars from a bygone era and they don't know what they are and they're trying to figure them out. Almost like The Little Mermaid, where she's finding all these artifacts from the surface world and doesn't know what they are. Maybe somebody has broken off the back of the binoculars and is using them as glasses. Maybe they're being used as a stool. Maybe they're being used by tiny little creatures as the means to create a tunnel from one location to another. So I would encourage you to try to think through some of those boring or lame prompts, because you never know where you're going to get with it. Now, for me specifically, I am going to tell a story, and I'm going to attempt to continue the travels of Andorra, this little witch who in this one is encountering a sand dune kind of worm dragon creature. I'm going to try to follow her through a lot of the story that is going to go into a children's book that I'm going to work on at some point. And for that, there is a lot of travel involved. So for me, the prompts are not a bad thing. But I'm going to try to do them a little bit differently. There's going to be some cases where I'm going to combine some of the prompts and put multiple ones into a single drawing. And there's also going to be some that are scenes that are really detailed and others that are just cutaways. Backpack, for example, is going to be that little witch girl putting on her backpack because she's getting suited up to go out on an adventure. In that particular drawing, I'm not going to have a scene though. It's going to be probably a page that has 3 little drawings like that, where she's putting on her boots, where she's putting on a backpack, and where she's grabbing her journal, which are 3 of the prompts. And so I will just do those as single drawings that have no scene in them. All of them have purpose. And it's a good point to note here too that you don't have to do these drawings in order. I mean, you don't have to do any of them at all because it's, you're doing it for yourself, but you don't have to do them in order. And I have not yet decided if I'm going to do them in order yet or not. I'm not worried about it, but if that is something that stresses you out or gives you some anxiety, just take a deep breath and realize you don't have to do them in order. If you want to take them and do them a different way, go for it. I am going to plan out probably 50% of my drawings before I start. I'm going to do a lot of sketching. I'm going to do some sketching and studying sessions here that will actually be me sorting through ideas, which if that's helpful for you, I will link them below so you can find those as well, because sometimes watching another person work can be really beneficial for you. Most of those sketches are not going to be hyper detailed. I'll use pencil or I'll use ballpoint pen, which is my preferred sketching medium, and I'll just do little drawings and then I'll hone in on the character, make sure that I get all her features the way that I want, and then I will draw my drawings out in pencil just like you see here before actually diving in and using ink. And just for what kind of supplies I'm going to use, I'm primarily going to use these microns, but I actually ordered a new set of pens. And I have a whole video on supplies for Inktober that you can check out. I'll link that one below as well. But I do have some new materials because new materials are exciting, and I'll be trying some of those things out as well. The biggest thing here is whatever creates the lowest barrier to entry for you is what you ought to do. So whatever makes this process something that you can commit to, that you can engage in. So you can hit the end of the month and you've finished the amount of drawings you set out to make, something that you can be proud of, that you can be excited about, whether you post them every day like, we're kind of pseudo supposed to on Instagram, or whether you just keep them for yourself, whether you share them on a Discord community like my own, which I would love for you to join and be a part of that with us. Whatever you set out to do, I just hope that you can find the right tools to do that. So when you hit the end of the month, you're happy and you're proud of the progress that you made. I feel so good when I hit the end of a challenge like this, when I hit the end of a long project, because that's all that this really is this is a long-term, a month-long project. When you hit the end of it and you're successful, it feels good, and that's fuel to help push you forward on your artistic journey. I probably grow the most during projects like this because I get in the routine. I do a little bit every single day. I study things. I work on lots of reference material. It's a good thing for us as we're moving forward. So I just hope that some of these tips and me walking you through some of my process and talking about the prompts has been somewhat helpful for you as you engage in this year's Inktober for 2024. As I mentioned earlier, we have a Discord server attached to this channel. There's a link for it below if you'd like to check it out. We work together on weekly prompts and things like Smogist and Inktober, so it's just a community that you can engage with, get some help, which is one of the best things, the ability to share your work and go, I don't know what to do here, I can't make this knee look correct. It's good to have other people who can kind of help you work on those things. So I would encourage you to check that out if it sounds like your cup of tea. Well, have a good one, y'all. See you soon.